What's up there, Workforce? Chris here with Work2Game, and it's actually just built up on me today that it is time for us to do a gaming weekly. Now this week is once again, I'm sure you guys are catching a theme here, brought to you by Patreons. The Patreons make this fan-funded channel so much easier to do for us, and we really want to say thank you. So definitely in the comments below, definitely feel free to thank our Patreons, or maybe even consider becoming one. Now with that, let's dive in. Now the first thing is Anthem. IGN has actually put together a comprehensive list of 135 facts that we now know about Anthem. Now most of these facts may be things you've already known if you've been following this kind of as we've seen different press releases through tweet or through their responses on Reddit or through the different announcements and trailers, but it is nice to actually go back and scroll through all 135. Maybe this deserves a video of its own. Definitely let me know in the comments below if that's something you'd like to see, but I just found it fascinating to kind of scroll through, see if there was anything new, see if there's anything, oh, I hadn't quite heard of it that way. I wish a lot of them were more sourced, where, you know, exactly where they're getting that information, but it definitely feels like, wow, I didn't realize we knew that much about this game. Now the second story also comes from IGN, and this is that developers are saying that Twitch is actually hurting single player games. And it's an interesting topic. It's not something that I really think is truly objective. They did mention in there that, you know, this isn't stopping Sony and Xbox and all these platforms from going out there and supporting them, and that it doesn't stop games from having short-term success like God of War, where you have these huge audiences in a very short time, but it focuses on the lack of replayability from the standpoint of streaming and from YouTube Let's Play content. Once the game has been beaten, once I've seen my favorite, you know, YouTube or Twitch personality play through the game, how does a game integrate with replayability, as opposed to there are whole channels out there on things like Fortnite and Minecraft, these games that have this constant churn of content, Final Fantasy, World of Warcraft, where there is always something new around the corner to kind of build a continued long-term audience on. And it's just kind of an interesting commentary, and most of the fact that they were focused on Twitch, from the fact that Twitch doesn't sort things like YouTube does. If I want to find single-player game players who are real chill and sit back and just enjoy the narrative, I can find channels by just searching that, and those kind of tags, YouTube will learn that that's what I like, and it will feed me into channels that play one single-player game to the next, to the next, to the next. But with Twitch, since it sorts things based on the number of people watching, it's easy to see how once that ball gets rolling, you have these huge audiences, and it gets hard to find the games that are a little further down the ranking without actively going and seeking them out. So it's just an interesting article. It mostly felt like an opinion piece, nothing to really panic about or nothing objective, just thought you'd find it fascinating. Now the third is from Lifehacker, and this is talking about a tool on Steam where you can discover exactly how much money you've spent. Now this has a lot to do with the regulations. I assume as we've done things talking about loot boxes and all this, a lot of countries, especially over in the EU, have done a great job cracking down on transparency. And some parts of the world have had more transparency with their game developers for quite some time, and some parts still don't have any transparency on what your odds are, how much you've spent, what you're getting for it. And so Steam is just kind of getting ahead of this, where worldwide it looks like they're rolling out this tool that will just kind of show you. Thought it was fascinating. I don't think it's meant to be like a point of shame or anything, but it does just kind of tell you, well, what do I get for it? It'd be interesting if in that same screen it showed you, well, how many hours are you playing on each game, so you can better drive which games you feel is worth the purchase. So if you feel like a game was not that fun, and then you notice, wow, I only played 20 hours on that, but it was 60 bucks, maybe they can use that to help better recommend games to you and say, you put 200 hours in this game, and this other game's a lot like it, so is that something you'd be interested in? I don't know, it could be an interesting way to kind of build off that tool and say, instead of that being just a point of shame or a point of budgeting, to use it as a tool to say, okay, let's just openly admit that we are going to spend money on games after this point in time. I'm not done spending money on games, but how do I better spend my money? How do I better track how my money is working for me when it comes to entertainment? Now the fourth story is Xbox One S is doing a Fallout 4 sale through Walmart for $199. Now they did a reduced sale price for E3. I assume we'll get another one for maybe Gamescom and PAX and, you know, the Christmas season, and it just seems like they're doing a great job pushing, maybe not the top end, the X's, but pushing those S's, maybe pushing any originals they still have. And this feels like they're just keeping up. So I don't think this is shocking news, but it's definitely something that tells you, guys, keep an eye out. If you've been on the verge of, you know, I have one console, I've been interested in another console, but I don't think it's worth the money, well, it might be worth it to hold out if you can, and just kind of look for a deal, especially if you're willing to consider pre-owned consoles and things like that, because the new console price coming down lowers the entire market. And so I just thought this was a fascinating trend, because honestly, you've got, you know, PS4 is at like 70 million 71 million, something ridiculous. Nintendo did like 17 or 18 million in their first year. They're expected to do another 20 million. in their second year. They're doing these crazy numbers, and Xbox won't release the exact numbers of where they're at on the whole like layers of consoles they have under the name Xbox One, but obviously they feel the pressure to go out there and try to get market share, just like they went out and invested all these development studios and everything at E3. They're putting money in that they expect to get out in the next generation. So this is a great time to be an Xbox gamer, because they are absolutely investing in Xbox as a community in hopes to grow that. And so it was just an interesting trend, and if you're thinking about picking up an Xbox, this is one of the many times that might be worth considering it. Now, our fifth story for the day is around the WHO classification of gaming. It is something that I did a video on before. The link will be to that in the description below, along with the links to all the articles that I'm covering here. And this one is from Polygon. It's talking about the new ICD-11 classification of gaming addiction. And there's kind of two really sides to this argument. There's a lot of articles about there. Philip DeFranco covered it. And basically you can say, on one hand, if you don't classify it, if you don't label something as a bucket, then there's no way to go back and look for trends. So if I just label everything loosely as car accident, then there's no way later to go back and say, well, how many car accidents are involving a semi, or are involving somebody that was drinking, or are involving a cell phone? So you have to break them apart, even if you're not ready to blame one, just so you can start tracking it. On the other hand, the classification that they chose to do is getting a lot of criticism because it's incredibly vague, and it's incredibly easy to just lump people into. And so, you know, I don't know exactly how you guys feel on it. I happen to have worked in and around the medical industry, and so this just happens to be one of the topics that I feel very comfortable reading about, as opposed to sometimes something else comes out and I'm like, I don't even know what they're talking about. And so, you know, how I feel about ICD-11, how I feel about ICD-10, which had its own headaches, but did aim to fix some very real problems. It's a whole nother topic. I talked about it a little bit in the video, like I said below, but I just wanted to say, you know, this is something that's out there. It's going to get a lot of press. People are going to use it as an excuse to vilify gaming without understanding ICD-11 or even what the classification really should mean. And there are going to be people who absolutely are against it because they're trying to defend against this vilification, even though the code on its own doesn't really do that. And so it's just a much larger topic, and I just wanted to kind of bring your awareness to it if you hadn't heard it. Now, Polygon did something a lot like the IGN thing on Anthem. Everything we know about Fallout 76. Fallout 76 is the game that I think will put the final nail in Destiny 2's coffin in my mind, based on everything we've seen so far. And so this talks about launch date, what is it, what can we expect from it, because obviously at E3, when we learned about the launch date and what it is, we learned a lot more about its multiplayer components, about the fact that it's coming out this November, about just everything that it includes, and it became a lot more real of a title, but also a lot different than I think what I was expecting the next Fallout game to be. And our seventh and final story is about Jurassic World Evolution. It is exactly the park sim you want it to be. So this is something I'd been kind of watching a little bit of this game on YouTube, a little bit of this game on Twitch, and so I don't know if any of you guys out there are into simulators like I am, but it's definitely something fascinating. Roller Coaster Tycoon, SimCity, Sims, simulator games are like a secret dark hobby of mine that I'm always afraid to start one, because I don't know that I come back out of that hole after the amount of time that I should. I tend to just stay in there for weeks on end and get nothing else done. So it's the reason I haven't picked this game up, but it is something that I wanted to let you guys know. If you hadn't heard of this, you should be following this. You should be going out there, catch a few videos on it, see if it's something you're interested in. And that's really it. So that's 7 stories for this week. I don't know how often I'm going to be doing these videos. With E3, it kind of threw the schedule off. I think I'm going to keep calling this segment Gaming Weekly, because I'd like to target it once a week, but it's really just going to be every time the stories build up, and the stories on their own haven't been made into videos by us, like, as individual topics. So let us know in the comments below what you think about these posts, what you think we'd like to be covering. Definitely always feel free to tweet at us or leave something in the comment section about topics you'd like us to go read, and if we feel they're big or anything, we'd love to mention them right here. So thank you guys so much. This has been Chris with Work to Game. I hope you guys are having a fantastic week, and I will see you next time. We really appreciate you watching. We really, really, really do. Really appreciate you watching. We really, really do. A 30-second end screen is so long. I don't know how to fill all this time.